and so many other terminologies are used for the same thing. Okay. Great. Yeah, so before we delve in, I want us to run through what we're going to be talking about this evening. The first lesson, we'll be looking at the essentials of development communication. And so I'll do a little introduction as to what development communication is, give one or two examples to bring it home to us. And then I will also move on immediately to show you the link between development communication and advocacy, because the bulk of what we're going to be discussing this evening will be on advocacy. But it's important for us to know where it evolved from. That's why the real title is development communication, and then advocacy is under, that is a subset of that. I will tell you where advocacy fits in, where development communication is. So we're going to be defining advocacy. We look at how to plan advocacy and strategies, tools, and things that you need to be able to plan an effective advocacy. We're going to be looking at some advocacy tools. And then lastly, we'll be looking at the qualities of a good advocate. Under advocacy, we'll also be looking at coalition building for advocacy, because it's not every time that by the time you analyze your organization and the length of time, that it will take to push a particular agenda or an issue to a logical conclusion, you may realize that you don't have all the resources, both human and financial. And so you may need to go into coalition. So we're going to be discussing coalition building for advocacy. And then we quickly look at lobbying. Lobbying is under advocacy, but it's important that we separate it so that we have a better understanding of what it is in relation to advocacy. And then we're also going to be talking about using the legal system. It may interest you that strategic litigation is an effective tool under advocacy, but because of its unique nature, it's important for us to separate it and have a separate conversation about that, how to use the legal system when it comes to advocacy. Our second lesson, we focus on stakeholders management. Because when it comes to advocacy, stakeholders are very, very important. You need to carry people along. You need to look behind you and find people who have people of like minds, people who believe in the same cause, and people who have perhaps the resources that you need to do the work. It will interest you to also know some very interesting set of stakeholders that people don't often consider when it comes to stakeholder management. But this evening we're going to be we're going to touch on that. Okay, so we'll be looking at who is a stakeholder map, stakeholder matrix, and then stakeholder assessment. When it gets to, I think we're going to have two assignments from lesson 1 and lesson 2. Something we're going to do together here, just to know whether or not I'm carrying you along and you have understanding of what we are discussing. And then lastly, we're going to look at some of the common challenges in the development communication. What are some of the challenges that practitioners have found, while implementing different, deploying different tools or implementing different development programs, making use of this particular principle, okay? Yes. So let's start with the definition of development communication. Please, let me quickly stop. Is there a way for someone to just let me know that I'm not talking to myself? If that is possible, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Whenever you want a feedback, I can just ask us, we'll unmute and respond.
Awesome, thank you, Debbie. Okay, so development communication is an interdisciplinary field, and is based on empirical research that helps to build consensus while it facilitates the sharing of knowledge to achieve a positive change in the development initiative. It is not only about effective dissemination of information, but also about using empirical research and two-way communications among stakeholders. This is from World Bank, but not just the World Bank, but the Development Communication Division of the World Bank. But the World Bank itself in 2006, under what we know as Rome Consensus, has this particular definition that it is a social process based on dialogue using a broad range of tools and methods. It's also about seeking change at different levels, including listening, building trust, sharing knowledge, and skills building policies, debating, and learning for sustained meaningful change. It is not public relation or corporate communication. While I think definitions are very important, but what he's saying essentially is that when it comes to development communication, we are talking about the participation of all the people concerned. What does that mean? If you are going to, for instance, if you're going to plan a project or an initiative for a community, okay? A community can be a group of farmers, it can be a group of people who belong to the same trade and all that. If you're going to develop anything that you believe will benefit them, development communication is saying you don't just develop it. They must be involved in the process of identifying the issues, prioritizing the issues, what the key issues are, and then also the process of implementation and all that. They must be part of the entire process. You know, we just, when I say we, I'm talking about, I'm part of the Octoville team, and we just came back from a validation workshop in Gombe. And one of the things, why are we doing validation workshop? We want to be sure that the people that we engaged, that is the MSMEs or the SMEs that we engaged, sorry, the MSMEs that we engaged in different communities across the northeastern states, that what we have put together in that report is actually their report. It's not our report, it's not Octoville's report, it is the report or reflection of the people that we engage. So the figures, the conclusions, the inferences and everything reflect the condition or the situation of the people as is, nothing else. So you don't smuggle anything in it. So as practitioners of development communication, that is our role. Your role is to ensure that you step out. You are just, because of your expert knowledge and your skills, you are helping people to put together and make sense of some of their issues and arrange them in a way that those who are supposed to take action on those issues can actually take actions on them. Okay? Are we together so far? Are we still together?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So I just want to quickly draw the link between development communication and advocacy. But before I do that, there is an interesting, I have this interesting picture here. Does anybody, you must have come across this online or maybe in the course of reading, can you tell me what this picture is about? Does anybody know?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. So that is actually Rosa Parks, the lady you see there. And you can see that the guy behind is a white man. So this event, by now, I think some of you understand what I'm about to say. That is a single woman taking action against the state. Because the law says that, the law that was in operation here in America was, I think there was segregation. So the white people are supposed to, so the bosses serving the metropolis or different parts of the US, this particular area, white people can get in, black people can get in, but the difference is when a black person gets to the boss, you sit at the back, okay, and the white people sit from the front, okay, and if the boss is filled up and there's no other space, and a white man gets into the bus, the black people will need to stand for the white person to sit. So this lady had enough of it, and on a particular day, she decided not to leave her seat. Okay, she was seated, and I think white people came, and naturally she was supposed to stand up and all that. She refused, and it became a major issue. It was not just limited to, I think this happened in Alabama or Mississippi, I'm not sure, I need to check. But it became a major issue, and then other issues were they were able to build other issues around this particular event. That is one person starting a protest. But this protest is a kind of advocacy, actually. You can call it, we're going to see this later, but this advocacy is adversarial, confrontational, that is, but it happens to be it proved to be very effective, because later the blacks would boycott public transport and all that because of loss of revenue. The policy of the state had to change, okay? And so we are dealing with something very important, and at this point, I need to really tell you that, yes, you can take an action as an individual that will boomerang and catch on to the point of becoming a state, national, or international issue, or you can team up with people to design an advocacy campaign that will be very effective based on some of the things we're going to discuss. So advocacy is one of the tools of development communication. So development communication is a broad term. It started not yesterday, as far back as 50s and all that. But the adoption of the principles of development communication, we started seeing it, don't quote me anywhere, but from my own experience, I started seeing it around the mid-90s, okay? But I was able to actually go through training on some of these principles in 2000 and 2005, 2006, because we're implementing projects in various communities and they wanted us to use this particular method, okay? I think at this point, it's important that I also let you know that before development communication, there are other things that people have tried to adopt in terms of principles when it comes to delivering development initiatives. For instance, you guys, I don't know if you are familiar with your states or even federal government before now. They will just look at a community and say, oh, what do they need? They don't have water. And I think the children trek 2 kilometers before they access primary education. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a primary school and we're going to give them water. Okay, we're going to drill boreholes in their communities without any consultations with the rural people. You have not consulted them. You have not, they don't really matter. You are the one doing them a favor. And then what do you see? What we eventually see is that our states, local governments, and different places across Nigeria are dotted with uncompleted projects or projects that have been abandoned or projects that are no longer functioning, okay? The reason is because the people were not properly factored into the process. And if you don't factor people into the process, your guess is as good as mine, they will not have ownership of it. So when you sink a borehole in a community, you should know that that borehole, there's one motorized engine inside. Even if it's not motorized, there is a pipe, there is this this lever that people pull up and down to pump water into their buckets. That thing can get spoiled. Something can, they can steal the lever. Anything can happen to it. So what happens? They will now look for government. The day government will come to replace that lever. Why? Because they did not carry them along. If they had carried them along, they will, and they had ownership. Immediately the lever got stolen, they will start contributing money. Either the official, the thief, or they contribute money to replace it. Okay, that is how important development communication is. So let's look at advocacy. But before then, the other tools under communication, development communication, we have communications for social change, you have social mobilization, media advocacy, legislative advocacy, so on and so on and so forth. So from this point, we're just going to be talking about advocacy. Advocacy. Yes. There is a lady, an advocate, I can't remember the year she died. Her name is Margaret Mead. And she said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever does. The only thing that changes the world is when people of like minds who are thoughtful, that is, they have knowledge, they have the skills, they know what they are doing, and they are also committed. They are passionate about the cause that they want to pursue. He said, don't underestimate, never doubt the change they can bring to the world. So what is advocacy? I know we have a definition here, but you know, advocacy at the basic, not definition, but the basic way I want you to see advocacy, it means to speak up. It means to speak up. Now, many people do not, I mean, when you move from one community to the other, or you move from one sector of the economy to the other, you can tell the ones that have very loud voices and the ones that do not even have any at all. That's the truth. If you want to gauge them based on how loud they are, based on how visible they are, based on how effective they are as an organization, as an association, as a sector, okay, of the economy or or political or social side of the country, you can tell how loud a group's voice is. Okay, so advocacy basically means to speak up. So one time, and it doesn't mean that you are the one speaking up as a practitioner. You are the one supporting groups. You are the one supporting associations. You are the one supporting communities. You are the one supporting, even sometimes you are speaking for an arm of government, okay? Sometimes we find ourselves doing that to amplify their voice. So you want to use strategies and techniques to ensure that their voice will be heard, okay, by the appropriate authority. So advocacy is a process through which individuals or organizations engage public policy decisions or legislation on specific issues. On specific issues. We're going to say more about that and why that is important as we move on. David Cohen is one major figure that we need to know in this field, in the field of advocacy. As at the time of putting this up, not now, I mean, the first time I put this up, I don't think if he still occupies this position. He was the co-director of Advocacy Institute, and he defines advocacy as that it consists of organized efforts and actions that use the instrument of democracy to establish and implement laws and policies that will create a just and equitable society. These instruments include elections, mass mobilization, civil action, lobbying, negotiation, bargaining, and court action. So what Cohen is saying essentially is that whatever action that you are putting forward must be lawful. Your actions must be carried out within the ambit of the law. You cannot, so that's what he meant by instruments of democracy to establish, you know, and implement laws and policies. So whatever you are doing should be, you shouldn't break the law. You know, that's what he's saying in essence. So still talking about advocacy, I just quickly want to let you know that you can break advocacy into two. The first is adversarial, while the second one is negotiated. When it's negotiated, you call it diplomatic, you know, advocacy. When it is adversarial, you call it confrontational. For instance, look at the examples I have under there. And I want somebody to answer me. ASU has had series of meetings with the federal government. What type of advocacy do you think that is? Am I talking to myself?
Negotiate. Negotiated.
Thank you. And while you are still there, what about NSAS?
NSAS was what's that one that has to do with adversarial, confrontation.
You are correct, adversarial and all that. Thank you so much. So you have adversarial and then you have negotiated and all that. And so adversarial advocacy engages activities like threat of protest. Okay. And then negotiated is when you engage decision makers and you aim to achieve desired objective through consensus building. Now, you may think that it's either you are doing engaging in adversarial advocacy, or you are engaging in negotiated advocacy. But let me quickly tell you this, that depending on the political environment, you may decide on which one is best suited to engage to engage the policymaker on a particular issue. And I will give you a very good example. From the year 2009 to 2000, up to the election of Jonathan in 2011, the issue that was the issue on the front burner was constitutional amendment. We're looking at how to review the electoral process. We're looking at how to amend certain parts of the Constitution to give us better elections and all that. The reason for that was that President Yar'Adua came in 2007, I believe, and in his first speech, he said that the election that brought him to power was fraught with a lot of irregularities and all that. So civil society organizations, donors, and every other advocates in the country, they just upped on the back of that, of some of the statements he made, and then they started, some donors started rolling out money, the CSO started developing advocacy campaigns and all that to quickly engage the electoral process and constitutional review, okay, to quickly do it. Now, as at that time, I was the program manager for Electoral Reform Network. Now, Electoral Reform Network was formed by another coalition. So Electoral Reform Network was a coalition of civil society organizations, not individuals. I was managing the secretariat at the time. And then there was another organization called ACE, Alliance for Credible Elections. Now, if you look at these two organizations, you will know that we are almost the same. We shared board members, we shared documents and so many other things. But what people will not know is that while we were on the table at the National Assembly negotiating for key issues that must be factored into the electoral reform process, Alliance for Credible Election was out there on the streets carrying placards that no review, no election, and so many other messages that were on those placards and all that. I'm just trying to let you know that it is not every time that you just say, oh, this issue, what we need to deploy is adversarial advocacy, or this other issue, what we need to deploy is negotiated advocacy. What sometimes you may need to do is to combine both in your campaign, but you must do it effectively in such a way. Look at the way we did our own. ERN had that image of a coalition that was peaceful, coalition that had very eminent personalities. SAN, Femi Falana was in that group, and so many other people were there. Festus Okoye, who is currently a national INEC commissioner, was then one of the board members of Electoral Reform Network. And so we would go to the National Assembly, we'll provide food, we sit around the table and discuss. And as we're discussing, if the outcome of that conversation or consultation happens to be unfavorable, guess what will happen? The next day, Alliance for Credible Election will be on the streets. So ERN will be saving face. Alliance for Credible Elections, known for protests, known for confrontations and all that, will be out there on the streets. But they wouldn't know that in the night, we're Christians, or we have always been Christian, but in the night, we'll come together and still further strategize on how to proceed on a particular issue that we're prosecuting at the time. I want to pause and just read out what Mahatma Gandhi wrote, one of his quotations. You may never know what results come from your action, but if you do nothing, there will be no results. If you venture out, things may not pan out the way you envisaged. But if you refuse to take action, nothing will happen. So which one is better? To take action, not knowing whether or not it will work, or to fold our hands and not do anything about a particular issue that we are passionate about, but we are too, let me use the word timid to do anything about, okay? So let's look at, we're still looking at advocacy. It can be conducted at the local, okay, Gladys, please, is there someone else who can unmute?
Yes.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask so that I don't lose it. What are the possible challenge you get with fusing two types of advocacy, especially with a coalition or a consortium?
Oh, thank you so much. You know, if I still want to use the example of Electoral Reform Network and Alliance for Credible Elections, the reason we did it, so you wouldn't see me carrying placards. And if I'm doing that with Alliance for Credible Election, I wouldn't be visible. I will be at the back. The reason is that if I become visible and I'm the one raising my hand and shouting in front, the next time as at the time, Senator Ikweremadu was the chairman of the Constitutional Review Committee, and I was in touch with his office. I was speaking constantly with his chief of staff. I was setting up meetings through the help of the clerk of the committee and all that. So imagine they switch on their TV and the guy who has been trying to set up meetings with them to sit at the table is also the one carrying placard and all that. You understand? So it can jeopardize that side of your negotiated advocacy if you are found to be part of those who also engage in confrontation. So that's why we divided ourselves that way. And trust me, when we make a meeting happen, for instance, in the National Assembly for we call it legislative advocacy, we still invite members of Alliance for Credible Election. But the difference this time around is that they are coming, not knowing that they are part of the organizers, but they are coming as guests to that consultation meeting so that our negotiation does not break down, so that we don't get labeled in such a way that we are unable to maintain our seats with policymakers. Gladys, I don't know if that makes sense to you. So that's
yes,
why,
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so
that's
much.
why we distributed ourselves that way. But for an organization who, but I've been in a situation where I had to play the two roles, and I'll just quickly give you that example while we are still here. I was to lead, so we formed in 2010, we formed a coalition of coalitions. What does that mean? I was heading a coalition. Alliance for Credible Election was another coalition. MBA can be taken as a kind of coalition. People living with disability, another coalition. Women groups, coalition. So several coalitions. We came together, and ERN that I was leading at the time was supposed to lead the advocacy efforts with the Senate committee at the public hearing that will be taking place in the Northwest. So I remember we had the event in Kano. Let me just quickly share this with you. Donor had released money. We had mobilized over 200 members across the country. We had printed T-shirts and other things, advocacy things. I mean, we had printed fact sheets, T-shirts, and so many things. So millions of naira had been expended. So we now got to Kano. 10 of our members were on the list to make presentations, and we have distributed the issues that each of them will be talking about to them. You won't believe that this public hearing was for 2 days. The first day, they were doing the thing. All the people that were supposed to present from civil society, they didn't call anybody. They were calling their cronies, they were calling the governors, some commissioners, I mean, some very funny people. We endured it the first day. The second day, we had gone halfway. I think the entire public hearing was supposed to last for, let's just say, for 4 hours. We had spent 2 hours the second day. There was nothing that shows that we were going to make our presentation. So how will I write my report to the donors? I mean, feel free to criticize what I'm sharing with you. I'm not sharing what needs to always happen. I want you to, criticism is part of this class. It's part of what we should do here. Is that all right? So I wasn't going to go back and just be writing reports out that they didn't allow us to make presentation. No, I wouldn't do that. I've been trained in adversarial and negotiated advocacy. So presenting our position papers at a public hearing is a negotiated advocacy, but it wasn't working. So guess what I did? I have 200 people in the hall, 200. So we distributed ourselves in the hall, and then I will make a sign. And the moment I make that sign, everybody will shout at the same time, no election, no reform, no election. We shouted, and then they approached me and some other leaders that, what do we want? I said, we've been here since yesterday. We've not made our presentations and all that. So out of the 10 people listed, 4 people were able to present our issues. What we just did was that we increased the issues that each of the 4 people will speak on. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense to us. So sometimes it may not be the issue of trying to preserve your image. It may be the issue of you have been negotiated out of the entire process, or you are not on the table and you need to get back to the table. So we had to deploy adversarial advocacy to be able to get back to the table. So immediately they gave us 4 slots. We calmed down, we went back to our seats, and then our representatives made presentations and all that. Now, but we need to be careful, because the question is, these are senators or House of Rep members, as the case may be. If through confrontation, they give you slots and you make your presentation, what is the assurance that they will not throw out your memorandum, the memo that you submitted to them, or the report on the issues, okay, that you submitted to them? The question, to answer that question, I'll quickly let you know that as we were with the senators, we were also working with the clerk of the committee. The clerk of the committee has the responsibility of collecting memos submitted by different groups. So we were not just banking on the legislators, we were also working in-house with the in-house with the clerk of the committee and some of the members and all that. So that is it about that. So advocacy can be local, national, or international. Okay, it depends on the issue. If you are talking about issues, if your issue or advocacy issue has to do with abolition of death penalty, it's an international issue, and so your advocacy can't just be local. So even though you might be the face of that particular issue in Nigeria as an advocate, you will still need to link up with other countries, advocates in other countries, so that you are leveraging on the resources, on your resources, to have effective campaign in your own country while other advocates are working in their own country. So it may be conducted at these 3 levels: national, international, and then local. And then there are different types of activities when it comes to advocacy. Lobbying is a form of advocacy, even though we're going to talk about it differently. Mobilizing people at the grassroots, okay? At the grassroots, that's one way sometimes of getting the support or getting heard. Let me give you an example. I've made presentations at different public hearings during several legislative advocacy. And when you get to the National Assembly, you realize there are other people pushing for for a particular state. Okay, they want new states to be created and all that. And so what do? You will not only see the sophisticated guys. Now, the big guys in the community, maybe they have a professor, they have doctors and all that, they put those ones forward. But you will also see the local people, the old people and all that. These are the things I observed in various public areas. Why? To show that we are not just representing the opinion of the elites. We have the support of our people. So it has to show also in the kind of representation you bring to the table. Okay, we have strategic litigation. Strategic litigation. There is a funny story. Are we still together, everyone?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
great, great.
Yes, sir,
thank you so much. There's a form of advocacy that we call strategic litigation. I don't know how many of you that is aware of an organization called SERAP. You can just look them up. SERAP. SERAP, even I don't have the full definition, but I've known them for a while. SERAP is that organization that we always take the federal government, state government, police, or anybody, they will take them to court. The reason is this. They just feel that an unjust law, is no law at all. That's what it's commonly said that way. So when you find policy makers using a particular clause in the Constitution or using a particular policy to undermine or to remove the voice of a community or undermine the well-being or livelihood of a set of people, as the case may be, you see organizations such as SERAP going to court for the court to interpret that section. And the moment they obtain judgment, it's binding on every one of us. Now, a very good example would be, if you have been in Abuja for a while, you remember that some years back under Jonathan, we had these guys that were collecting 50-50 naira for 30 minutes of parking. Roads in Abuja were marked. I want somebody to just confirm that you remember that era in Abuja. Yeah. Okay, so roads were marked and all that. People would just park. And the moment you park, you pay, they give you a ticket, you put that ticket somewhere in your windshield and all that. But if you don't show up after 30 minutes, the guy will just call for the towing vehicle. They will tow your vehicle somewhere. And then you will have to pay, I can't remember whether 25,000 naira or something in that neighborhood to get your car released to you. Now, and that was going on. So some people just felt that was not fair. Now, Jonathan was the president. It will amaze you that the company that was doing that, I don't know, you need to verify also, this is my disclaimer, happens to be a guy headed by a guy from Bayelsa. So people just felt that was unjust. So they went to court. We just woke up one morning and we realized that we could park and all those guys collecting tickets, car tickets and all that were gone. Now, that is how effective strategic litigation can be. Once that verdict is given, you don't, the entire oppression or whatever you have, what have you, disappears, okay? And then using media to raise public awareness or to build visibility for the issue. There are times that you are not ready to engage policymaker yet. What you just want to do is that you want to first build up on the issue, because the timing of an advocacy issue is very important. If you come out too fast, that issue may be subsumed under other issues that are in the front burner at the time. So you need to be strategic when it comes to pushing a particular agenda or pushing a particular issue. For instance, you may need to still stay with the media, using the media to build visibility around that issue. You can sponsor ads on television that speaks to that particular issue. That can be going on, and then you notice that social media and all around, that issue seems to be what people are discussing and all that. At the appropriate time, you just launch out. You can tell that I'm not your conventional facilitator. I'm trying to demonstrate how advocate, this is how we are. You just say it the way it is, but there's something upstairs that is helping you to plan properly, okay? So I'm adopting this facilitation mode deliberately to show you that, well, I've been an advocate and I will always be one, okay? So protest and demonstrations is another. ASU has been on the table with federal government. It has not yielded any result. Now, but ASU needs to be careful because they are almost losing the public sympathy. So you need to really watch out. These are some of the pitfalls, when it comes to advocacy. You don't want to overstretch a particular issue. And the reason why that happens is because you have not taken enough time to analyze the environment, the political environment, the social environment, the legal environment, the technological environment. When you have not economic environment, you need to analyze the environment properly before you say, these are the tools we are deploying, this is the type of advocacy we're going to embark upon, and so on and so forth. This is how long it will last. And if we are unable to get our demands met, we are going to resort to this other plan. These are the things you do. But ASU, I don't know what's going on. I believe they know what we are talking about this evening, but they are losing the public sympathy. Once that happens, your issue will suffer miscarriage, and you don't want that to. You don't want that to happen. Okay. Let's quickly look at types of advocacy that we have. Okay. We have many. There are many of them, but I've just listed this one. Okay. We have legislative advocacy. That is when you are engaging with the legislative arm of government. When you are engaging with the House of Rep or the House of Senate or the Senate, or you are engaging with House of Assembly at the state level, okay, at the state level, or you are engaging with, I think at the local level, I don't know what they are called. I think they are called secretaries, or no, they are called councillors, okay? I'm not sure now, at the local government level. Now, the judicial advocacy is when you engage with the judiciary, okay? I don't know how many of you remember in Nigeria, when we transited to democracy, to deliver electoral judgment was very, very difficult because of the way the legal structure, the judicial structure was set up. And through advocacy, what I call judicial advocacy, they were able to come up with policies that design a new structure, a new judicial structure for administering electoral issues. And so with that structure, I think with less number of people that we used to have can sit on a matter and quickly dispense of that particular issue. And because of that provision, they were able to reduce the length of time a political issue or electoral issue can stay or can last in our courts. Okay, I think special election tribunal. We set up special election tribunals to also adjudicate cases that borders around electoral issues and all that. These are products of advocacy. I'm just trying to tell you that all those things you witnessed didn't just happen. Some people engaged with the policy makers and got judgment or became effective or got results. And that result is what led to the speedy dispensation of electoral justice. I believe that's correct. And all that. So administrative advocacy. Administrative advocacy is when you engage with the executive, okay? When you engage with the executive arm of government, they have, they issue policies, and so many other things. They also recommend certain issues that they want the National Assembly to look into. So sometimes you may find yourself amplifying the voice of the executive so that the legislators will take it serious, especially when the president belongs to a different party than the majority of those who have the leadership of the National Assembly or the House of Assembly, as the case may be. Okay, and then lastly, we have grassroots advocacy. This advocacy takes place, at the rural, very rural level. You are giving them information, things they didn't know before. It's more like awareness creation. And then you build their awareness to a point where they are able to stand up for themselves. They are able to say, what? You mean this is what is going on? If I may quickly share this with us. And Nelson is on the call, so he can correct me if I'm not totally correct, if I'm not totally right about this. Some of our people from Octoville were deployed to northeastern states, and they were engaging with nano and micro enterprises and all that. And one major issue that they brought to the attention of some of these traders is how they patronize banks and the percentage of interest that they pay on loans and all that. So why some of them had are taught that the loan that they are collected from the bank is, what do you call it? It's maybe they are paying by just 10%. But our staff was able to show them how that it's not actually 10%, in some cases 15, in some cases 20, or as high as 40%. So we had situations where some of them said, what? No wonder. I just kept paying and paying and paying, and I couldn't put something aside for myself. No, that is, you may think that we're just in communities to just get data and all that, but that, what we're also doing is what I would call grassroots advocacy, because we're bringing enlightenment to people. And through the knowledge you are giving them, they are now able to take action. They now know that, no, this loan is not good for me. So when they finish paying, they will not get another one. Or they may want to engage the bank. Maybe there's a forum created to speak, and then they may now engage the bank better on how to develop better products, better loan facilities for them to be able to access, and so on and so forth. I believe that's a good example. Nelson, just let me know if that happens to be a very good example to reflect grassroots advocacy. So I use that example to let you know that sometimes in carrying out your day-to-day activities, you may find yourself acting as an advocate. You may find yourself bringing enlightenment to a people. Find yourself. Thank you so much. Find yourself, opening the eyes of people to things they didn't know before. But be careful, because if you don't manage your advocacy efforts very well, it can turn to something you never imagined. Let me just quickly chip this in. Many of you know about the period that anytime, today, if you're writing a proposal, you must mainstream Northeast into your proposal. You must, the moment you say that you're going to work in the Northeast and all that, you are almost 30 to 40% sure of at least getting recognized by some donors, because that is the focus. They are trying to rebuild the Northeast. They are trying to, so they are pumping, there's a lot of money being pumped of funding that is going to the Northeast. And then suddenly, organizations in Lagos, organizations in Abuja, organizations in Akwa Ibom, all of them are now pitching. They now have offices in the Northeast. You know why? Because they are following the money. They are following the money, really. So the Northeast is the bride. But before the Northeast, you will remember that Niger Delta was the in thing. Niger Delta was it. Any proposal you are writing, just say that you are going to work in Bayelsa, in Port Harcourt, in Akwa Ibom, and some parts of Ondo State, you are mostly going to get funding. If you write, if the proposal, happens to be well written and all that. Now, why do you think Niger Delta suddenly became a thing in Nigeria? It's as a result of several advocacy activities, opening the eyes of the people to speak up for the I don't want to say desecration, what's the word? For destroying their land, the Ogoni land, and all those other parts of Bayelsa where you can no longer really farm and things like that. Okay? But guess what? That advocacy worked. Shell is now factoring the communities into their plans, into development. So Shell is just supposed to tap oil and go. But now they have several scholarships. Shell scholarship came out of that advocacy, okay? Giving scholarship to those who are from Niger Delta states, and some other people. And it came from there. Chevron scholarship came from advocacy efforts, okay? It didn't just happen. It came from it. Several dialogue sessions, public-private dialogues in the Niger Delta came as a result of advocacy campaigns and all that. But guess what? The militants also emerged from that effort. You may call it unintended impact of advocacy efforts. But guess what? Why you succeeded? Because communities in Niger Delta are now more enlightened and they can speak out for themselves. In fact, they spoke out to the point that Kensaro Wiwa lost his life with the rest of the 7 other guys. If you remember, Abacha killed them. And I don't know if the story is true, but they said he killed them and poured acid on them and, just exterminated them from the earth. as a result of being advocates. They didn't do any other thing other than speaking for their people. So these are some of the negative consequences sometimes that advocates face. Advocacy planning. Why is it? So I had 2 questions, and the 2 questions will guide us to talk about advocacy planning. Why is it necessary to plan your advocacy strategy? Why is it important? Why should it be planned? Number 2, what does the advocacy strategy planning process entail? What constitutes advocacy strategy? Okay. Now, to answer number 1, every advocacy campaign needs to be carefully planned regardless of the issue involved, the scope of the advocacy, the shape or form which the advocacy may take. It's very, very important that advocacy campaigns are planned. Don't just wake up. Now, you guys, I want all of you to be my friend, but I want you to take a critical look at NSAS movement. It was a kind of adversarial advocacy. But you will agree with me that the thing started before we started planning. It wasn't planned and then launched. When you plan advocacy properly, even though other people will join you, if you do things correctly, your stakeholder mapping, your stakeholders list, power analysis, and so many other things that should happen before you launch an advocacy, if you do that, you'll be able to manage the process. But if you don't plan advocacy properly, what will happen is that it may grow and boomerang and grow out of hand. You are now unable to undo what you have created. You can grow a monster that you are unable to now control, because NSAS now got to a point where those who had something to say, those who understood the principles of advocacy and all that, they suddenly became, people became suspicious of them. Some people believe that some guys had sold out and things like that. These are things that happen when you don't plan an advocacy properly. NSAS, you may say, did it work? Well, to some extent, because I think the ripple effect of NSAS is still with us. But it will have, had greater impact if it had been planned properly before launching out, okay? But that came later. It was later we now drafted, I don't know, was it 5-point agenda? This and this and these are the things that we want the federal government to do. And I think they took on some of the issues, if not all, the issues that we put forward. So to that extent, it was very successful. But generally speaking, NSAS will have achieved more if the key leaders are taking it upon themselves to plan, okay, and all that. You may argue that it just happened like that, like Arab Spring. Well, I may agree with you or disagree with you, because I think that that some people actually had inkling that that may happen. Some people actually started it. If those who started it are taking it upon themselves to step back and try to picture how they want it to go, how they're going to go, the strategies and the tools they would deploy, we will have had a better outcome, I believe. We wouldn't have had a situation whereby soldiers were shooting and things like that, because we will have carefully analyzed the security agencies, because who is planning advocacy, adversarial advocacy, without factoring in the security agencies as a major stakeholder? You understand what I'm saying? As a major stakeholder. So that wasn't done. So it helps to determine in the first place whether advocacy is the appropriate approach for effecting a desired change. Now, that's very important. In some situations, you don't need advocacy. Maybe what you need is strategic litigation. Just take them to court. Okay? Oh, thank you. Just take them to court. So it's not every time that you use advocacy as use advocacy campaign, there are other tools available that you can use. But it should be based on careful analysis, okay? Careful analysis, okay? Before you determine the tool that you are going to deploy to effect a particular change, okay? For your advocacy campaign to be effective, there are 4 things that you need to put bring into focus. 1, clearly define goals and objectives that are achievable. very good, that are achievable, For instance, imagine if part of the things that we're asking for during NSAS was we want Buhari to leave power. I don't know to what extent we'll be successful. Or we want the Inspector General of Police to be changed. I don't know how. So you really need to look at the issue you are pushing and ask yourself, is this achievable? To answer that question, I will take you back to the analysis of the environment, the political environment especially, okay? You analyze the environment. Is this the right time? Does this reflect the pulse of the people? It's very, very important that you come up with advocacy objectives that are achievable, okay? Secondly, you need to identify potential supporters and opponents. Supporters are the people, okay, supporters and opponents are both called stakeholders, or they are both called key actors, as the case may be. So oftentimes, when people are planning advocacy, they are only looking at their allies. They are looking at people that support them and all that, but they don't factor in the spoilers. Okay, the spoilers. That is the thing. So let me give you a very good example. Still going back to 2007, So 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, we were busy with a lot of advocacy campaigns around the electoral reform issues. Don't forget that he set up Mohammed Uwais commission. I really need to apologize. I engaged a lot with legislative advocacy. I did a lot of work around that. That's why my examples are coming from there. Okay, so Justice Uwais committee had made recommendations and all that. Now, the question now is, how do we get the National Assembly to adopt, the recommendations of the ERC committee? Okay, that was our concern. But guess what? At that first trial, we were designing advocacy campaign, doing all sorts of things. Do you know what we didn't factor in? We didn't factor in a spoiler. So I'm making a mistake. My example is coming from when Obasanjo was in power, when he set up there was this council that he set up, and he put people from different parts of the country to discuss the nation and propose way forward and make informed recommendations that we advance the cause of the nation. I don't know if you remember, not Yar'Adua. So that particular group, came together and all that, and then Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes, you wanted to give us the name of the committee.
I wanted to say something, but go ahead. When you are done.
No, go. You can say what you are.
What I wanted to say is that I think NSAS was more of an ideological kind of advocacy than initiative, because whether we want to agree or not, there was actually no face to hold for such things. So when it's an ideology, people tend to conceive it the way they can conceive it and deploy, since there is no particular identity to it. We had, like you said, we have supporters of advocacy. So people were springing up from different places. Okay, they support this motion, they gave for this, they did for this, but there was no entity to actually hold, okay, we are the ones that are initiative or initiators of this NSAS, and this is our agenda, until when different agendas started coming out, like the 5-point agenda you said it raised. So I think it was more of an ideological kind of advocacy, and that was one of the reasons why it flopped. There was no entity to say, okay, this is the face for it. It was just a cry of people, citizens clamoring over a particular vice that wasn't okay with them, and they started brewing until it boomerangs.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I want to ask you a follow-up question. Are you aware that some accounts were frozen?
Yes, I was. So those are the supporters I would call the supporters of the advocacy eventually,
Okay,
because they had
I
to
like the
trace them.
language. I like the language you are using, and I agree with you. I mean, for using that language, yeah, Thompson said it wasn't systematic. I agree with you. I agree with you. That was Gladys, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, I want to agree with you, but let's not flog the matter. I actually believe that there were guys, because if you as a development practitioner, one of the things you want to look at when you look at NSAS, don't look at when the thing became an issue. You may want to review the events and certain individuals, certain things that happened prior to that, leading up to that. And it may put you in a better place when it comes to asking whether or not this thing was, well, I agree with you because that's what it appeared to be. But I also believe that there were some guys that actually started something that eventually led to what we know as NSAS. So in order not to argue, I queue behind you, but we can discuss this further outside when we leave this class. Okay, so you identify potential supporters and opponents. And I was giving an example of the time of Obasanjo when he wanted to have they call it national something conference, not sovereign conference, but a kind of. Sorry, can you mute your mic? Thank you. Yeah, so during that period, civil society organizations and everybody engaged. Donor organization role, gave funding, and I mean, a lot of, we did a lot of work and all that. But guess what? In all this analysis, nobody factored Obasanjo into the process. We just assumed that he had good intention for setting it up until the third term agenda came up, for those who can remember. That third term agenda met civil society organizations and other advocates unawares. It caught them unawares. Why were they caught unawares? Because a proper analysis, stakeholder analysis wasn't done. They looked at the supporters and they aligned with them. They looked at other actors and they aligned with those ones, but they never thought that Obasanjo could spoil everything. It was a spoiler. So guess what happened? I remember the meeting we had that, you know what, the language we used was that we're going to throw away the baby with bathwater. The reason was that people had made very good recommendations concerning the electoral process, concerning the sharing formula or whatever name you want to call it, very good recommendations in that report. But immediately they introduced third term agenda. Civil society said that we didn't plan for this. So they decided to destroy the entire thing, to throw away the baby with the bathwater. And that's why that report didn't see the light of day. Nobody embraced it. Third term agenda just messed everything up. Obasanjo was angry, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yes, so you identify potential supporters and opponents, develop persuasive messages. Messaging is very, very important. We'll talk more about that later. Your message is very, very important. It must be catchy. It must be simple. It's something that speaks clearly to the issue, okay? So nothing's too sophisticated, because it is the level of your stakeholder analysis that determines the way you phrase your messaging. If all the people you have there are sophisticated PhD holders and educated folks and all that, you can put the messaging will reflect that. But if you want to move, if it's going to be a mass movement, if grassroots will be involved and all that, then you want to watch out for the way, for your message must be such that everyone can identify with it. And a simple picture can actually tell the story. Yeah, as a simple picture can tell the story. One organization that is doing well in this regard is an organization called Budget. I don't know if other people have been doing it, but they started using, They started using infographics to communicate. Because when you say somebody stole, for instance, in Nigeria, let's say what's the name of that man? He's the Accountant General of the Federation now. I can't remember. That stole, they said he stole 80 billion naira, right? When you say 80 billion naira, Nigerians may just say, ah, but nobody takes action because it doesn't really mean anything to anybody. But imagine there is a picture of ASU, and there's a picture of aviation, and there's a picture of about 6 airports. You now put those pictures, and then you put one big picture, and inside you put 80 billion. In other words, 80 billion will give you 5 airports and this. You know, people can now become angry and want to take action. So Budget started using that, and I know that Yaga, that electoral that NGO, also started adopting it in their reporting and all that, is to be able to communicate to a wider audience, okay? To a wider audience. So part of advocacy planning is your message is right. And then lastly, mobilize people and resources for action. That is basically what the advocate is doing. You are mobilizing people, you are mobilizing resources. If you mobilize people, you need to be able to cater for the needs of the people you are mobilizing. In my own, if I want to go back to how I used to do it, anytime we had legislative consultations and all that at the National Assembly, it used to cost a lot of money. Number one, I will bring members from across the country. I will lodge them in a hotel, pay them per diem, okay, provide about 2 or 3 buses of 36 seaters that will take them from their hotel to the National Assembly. I will go to the National Assembly and ensure that I give some work. Nelson, please feel free to chastise me on this. I will engage the clerk of the house and give them some task so that I will be able to pay them to carry out certain assignments for me, knowing that it will be effective. So they will be able to give me tags and order and facilitate the entrance of my members into the National Assembly chamber or National Assembly premises, because it was a period of Boko Haram, if you recall, and they were not, that was when they stopped allowing people to drive or to get into National Assembly without being checked. So all these things are very important when it comes to mobilizing people. You must think whether or not you have enough resources, okay? And then, so there are questions you ask yourself. The first one, clearly define goals. Are these goals achievable? You want to ask yourself, have we captured all the supporters and the opponents as far as this issue is concerned? Our messages, do they appeal to our allies? Do they appeal to all the stakeholders and all that? These are the questions that you ask, and then you try to look for answers. The process of framing these questions along the lines of these 4 things I spoke about and finding answers to them is the development of your advocacy strategy. In other words, by the time you are engaging with each of these 4 points, you are actually in the realm of advocacy. You are developing your strategy for your advocacy campaign. Still talking about advocacy planning. The advocacy strategy will enable you to access the context of a plan. Sorry about the repetition of words there. A planned advocacy campaign, including the external and internal environment. So part of the planning basically is to scan or to analyze or assess the context, that is the environment where your advocacy campaign will be carried out. So for the external environment, we are talking about things that are outside of your organization, but they have direct impact, okay, whether positive or negative, on your advocacy campaign. These things are outside of your control, but if you don't keep your eyes on them, if you don't watch out and carefully analyze them, they will affect the outcome of your advocacy, okay, and things like the public policy that the advocacy is aimed at. You must have clear understanding of the policy of government that you are trying to change, or you are trying to improve, or you want to introduce. Maybe it's a new policy that you want government or appropriate, whether legislative arm or executive or the judiciary, to consider. So the public policy, you must have clear knowledge of that particular advocacy issue, okay? that you are trying to address. So in other words, if it's a particular provision in the Constitution, you must know that Constitution, you must know where it is, you must have an idea of some of the conversations that had happened around that particular issue, you know, and so on and so forth. I can give you a very good example. We have been advocating for since I can't remember, since we transited to democracy, that the office of the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister for Justice should be separated. Because the Minister for Justice usually is would be an appointed position based on the fact that you supported a particular political party. Okay, but the Attorney General of the country has roles. I'm not a lawyer, but has roles that are so critical that you don't want any political interference. Am I making sense to anybody here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, so they have roles. So up till now, the provision of the Constitution is that the two offices are combined in one, but we feel that it should be separated. Let me give you an example. Do you know the Attorney General can stop the proceedings on a particular case that is of interest to the public? For instance, someone that has caused serious harm in a particular, maybe in previous administration, and in the turn of the event, we now have a new administration, the new Attorney General can stop that litigation. He can stop it, and the guy can just walk out free. Or there are so many cases, if you are aware, that they have not been prosecuted. Some are midway, and you know that they will never be visited. That is how sensitive that position is. So you need to be aware of the policy of government that you are trying to advocate about. So you need to know the section, you need to know some of the sentiments that have been expressed over the years regarding that particular issue. Is very important. Next, the political climate in which the advocacy is to be conducted. Very, very important. Very, very important. Let me give you an example. ASU is a very good example. ASU is losing sympathy. Why? Because they are not, see, things are like 3 times more expensive than they used to be. People are hungry. People, I mean, so many things are going on in the country in terms of, economic hardship and all that. And then in the midst of that, the children are at home. This may be overstretching it, but all these kids that you just give their pocket money to go to school, they are busy eating your food. They are eating more food. They are consuming more because they have nothing doing, and they've been home for months. So something as simple as that can make a parent not to want to hear anything else and all that. So people are now beginning to say that, oh, ASU should be sued. They are telling, the federal government is telling students to sue ASU, and so many other funny things are just going on right now because ASU is not engaging properly. In my own opinion, I think maybe they need to engage Octoview so that we can design something that will work at this point, hopefully. Okay? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The message, I mean, it's not impossible. It's not impossible, okay? It is always impossible until it is done. I learned that from Nelson. So, yeah. The message to be communicated to the key players, okay? So, you need to identify who the key players are. For instance, I'm using the word key players here, but we are talking about stakeholders that have been carefully identified, carefully mapped, carefully listed out. And then, if you like, you have done the power analysis to know who has influence, who has power, who has what. You want to analyze that properly. And then, so that if you don't do that analysis properly, your messaging will be affected. You will not know. And if your message is wrong, imagine someone is your supporter, you can turn them to your opponent because they don't agree. There is something in your messaging that conflicts with what they believe or what they stand for. And so what we have in your hands will be a situation whereby somebody that is supposed to be supporting you may actually be working against you. Please, everyone, be like Gladys. Feel free to interject. I just want to talk. I am in a place where I don't think the person that is supposed to help with light is around. I'm not sure. So I don't know how much longer I have, but I've dimmed the light on my computer. Hopefully we can last the period of time we have. Okay. So the messenger who will communicate the message must also be right. The message must be right. The messenger must be right. I remember some years back, I was doing, I got some money from OSIWA, Open Society Initiative for West Africa, to do a number of advertisement around to promote peaceful elections and things like that. And I remember reaching out to Bishop Cardinal Onaekon. That's the, I think it was the camp president at the time. I reached out to the camp president. I reached out to the NBA president and so many other people. And then somebody called me and said, you want to use the NBA president? I don't want to mention his name. At that time, some years back, he had mentioned something that was controversial. So they were trying to call my attention during the advocacy planning that, why are we using this man? So we had to argue back and forth. So eventually we used him because of the position he was occupying. And hopefully we were with our fingers crossed that nobody will come up with the statement he made in time past that will make him a wrong champion for the issue that we want to push and all that. But we did that at that time. So how the message will be communicated, this is very, very important. So you have a message. How are you going to communicate this advocacy message? Is it going to be through are you going to use a fact sheet? Are you going to develop a fact sheet, which is just a sheet of paper that contains facts and figures, and then there is a call to action in that particular sheet of paper that anybody reading it, that is the steps they are supposed to take, haven't read it, is also included in the communication. Is that what you're going to use? Are you going to use what you call IEC materials, in which you have pictures? Sorry, not IEC material. Are you going to use pictures and infographics and things to communicate that anybody looking at it can easily know what you're talking about and what the advocacy is about? So you need to determine the mode of transmission, the channel through which the message will be communicated is very, very important. Still talking about, so all that we just finished talking about has to do with the external environment. Now let's look at the internal environment, which focuses on matters that are within the purview of the organization. These are things that you can undo. These are things that you have power to change, to control, and to tweak as you like, okay? That is what the internal environment refers to, okay? And it can impact on the success of your advocacy campaign. So you must do it correctly. You must do it right for your advocacy to be very effective and to yield the desired results. So number one, assess the resources of your organization to conduct advocacy campaign. Let me quickly let you know this. How many of you know about FOI Act, Freedom of Information Act? It was passed some years ago. I just want someone to answer me. Hello?
Where is it?
Okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Sorry, are we still together?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I'm guessing most people have not heard about it, sir.
Oh, they've not heard about it. So Freedom of Information Act was passed, I don't know whether 2011 or 2012. I'm not sure. But the point I want to make is in relation to assessing the resources that you have for advocacy. One major thing you have to consider is that advocacy requires patience. Advocacy requires patience. Sometimes you will start an advocacy campaign in, let's say, you know how they name the National Assembly. National Assembly, they used to name them 7 or 8 and things like that. So you may start with a particular administration and then up to the point that that administration is handing over to another, you have not really succeeded. That advocacy is still ongoing, okay? And then the new administration comes on board, you will start all over again and build momentum and things like that. So advocates must be very patient, very patient. FOI Act, it took 11 years, read my lips, 11 years for that particular advocacy to yield the result for it to be passed, okay? For it to be passed, 11 years. So imagine the resources, imagine series of meetings, engagement, consultations, lodging people in hotel, paying per diem, and all that, 11 years. So you need to assess the resources of your organization to conduct advocacy campaign. Then you identify the internal challenges which your organization faces, which could affect the campaign. For instance, if what could affect it, if a particular donor is not really interested in certain issues, and those issues are at the center of what you want to do, okay? And you don't want to lose this donor because they represent, let's say, 45 to 50% of your annual revenue. So you don't want to lose them. But there is this issue that that you are passionate about as an organization. So what do? You need to look at some of these challenges and find a way to address it. Maybe you'll be part of it, but you will be the one to lead it. You can initiate it and get another organization to lead it. I mean, there are different ways out of this, but for you to know it, you must do a proper analysis of your internal environment. The next thing to do is to outline the proper sequence of launching the various components of the advocacy campaign. For instance, you may start with protests and all that. You make so much noise, and everywhere you go to places across the country, and then the government, the media now start addressing you. What do you want and all that? You start identifying, mentioning and sensitizing the society about the issues that you are about. The next thing, you are writing to maybe the executive arm, the governor, or you are writing to the legislative arm, the Senate, okay, or the House of Rep. And then because you have made so much noise, everybody knows your organization now. Everybody, they kind of have an idea of what you are about and what you are pushing. So you are now able to get a spot on the table. That can be a good strategy, okay? But that can only happen when you have done the proper sequencing of how you want to launch the campaign. So while you are starting as adversarial, from adversarial position, you may want to end up where you are really headed is to be able to negotiate with policymakers. Design an evaluation process through which your organization can determine if your campaign is working. So it's not enough to develop an advocacy campaign. You must also build an evaluation process into it so that at any point in time, you can see, are we getting the result that we require? Let me give you a very good example. FOI Act, it took 11 years, okay, for it to be passed into law. But imagine the donors that have been supporting this organization. There must be a kind of results that they have been reporting for the past 11 years, even though it has not been passed, but it should be that, oh, National Assembly is now talking about it, or senators are now debating it, you know, and all that. But till their tenure ended after 4 years, they didn't pass any law, but they discussed the matter extensively. That may be a good enough result for a donor, as the case may be. So that is an outcome of having an evaluation process built into the initiative. How the message will be communicated, I've discussed this earlier, is also very, very important as part of your assessment of your internal environment, to discuss how you will engage, maybe with your supporters, you will engage, how will you undo or manage your opponents and all that. These are things that you discuss when it comes to the way you put together your campaign. Advocacy tools. Before looking at some of the advocacy tools we have here, to advocate effectively requires the use of many advocacy tools and techniques. There are a variety of advocacy tools available for conducting any advocacy campaign directed at different issues and levels of government. An advocacy campaign will usually not rely on one tool, and so on and so forth. You can read the rest. So what we are saying essentially is that when it comes to the deployment of advocacy tools, you are not only using one. You are not using one. In fact, oftentimes advocates wear many caps, and it depends on the cap they are wearing. The caps they are wearing is what will determine the tool that they want to deploy. So, for instance, you may want to deploy what do we call it? Let me just pick one. You want to create a set of videos that speak to a particular issue. That issue may not even be the real issue. The video may just be about getting and identifying supporters. So you want to put the message out, and the action they're supposed to take is part of the message that you are putting out in that video, okay? And then once you have everyone on board and you are able to start discussing the issue, bringing everybody to the same level of understanding as far as a particular policy issue is concerned, you can now then discuss the advocacy tools that you want to deploy when it comes to engaging with policymakers, with the or with Nigerians, with the nation, you know, as the case may be. Okay. Before we leave advocacy, I just wanted to see the qualities of a good advocate: a good listening skills, ability to motivate, knowledge about the issue. So one important issue you must have here, that you must take note of here, the knowledge about the issue is very important. You cannot be taking an issue, for instance, to the executive, maybe to the presidency, and then those who are seated at the table, they have more knowledge than you. No, it won't work. If you are going to be educated by the people you are taking advocacy to, that advocacy is, for me, I think it has almost failed if it hasn't failed. Okay, you must have knowledge. You are the one informing them. Even when they want to appear knowledgeable, there must be something in the bag that you can bring out to show them that they are still learners. I'm sorry, apologies for my lingo. You know that they are still learners when it comes to this particular issue. Okay, you must be patient. I told you, advocacy is not an 100-meter dash. It's a marathon. It can last for a day and it can last for years. So you must be patient. You must be patient. Okay? Knowledge about the issue is very critical, I've mentioned. You must be articulate. Now, if I may be very good when it comes to advocacy planning, when it comes to analyzing and deploying the appropriate tools, but I may not be very articulate. So what do? You look for a good messenger. You look for someone. So the person that is going to speak for you is someone who is not only knowledgeable about the issue, but the person is also articulate. So in my days, during my legislative advocacy days, I used to engage a man called Festus Okoye. He has his practice in Kaduna, and he happens to be one of the national commissioners of INEC today. But at that time, he was just the executive director of human. I can't remember the name of his organization. And all that. So very articulate, very knowledgeable. So why national assemblies were still thinking of 20, 40, 50 issues? The man just got there. He said, for the next election to be successful, these are the 4 things that we need to pay attention to. These are the 4 areas that require review in our electoral process. Guess what? That's it. You must be articulate. You must be able to convince the people that the policymakers, that you know what you are talking about, and they should come to your side. Organization is very important. Flexibility, very important. If one tool is not working, use another one. If one strategy is not working, use another one. Okay. Positivity. You must be positive. Okay. That your advocacy will yield results. Okay. That will yield results. Okay. Sorry, I just want to quickly check the level of my. Okay, I still have battery. It's good. I think we are still good. Are we still together, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I want to, there is an activity that we're going to do. I think that will get everyone talking, but let me quickly run through this coalition building, and then when we cross over to start discussing stakeholder mapping, stakeholder analysis and power analysis and all that, I have a particular assignment that I want every one of us to engage, okay? And then I will see, just to test the level of assimilation, just to let you know that there is no big deal when it comes to advocacy. Yes, the knowledge is important, but it's something that you can start. It's something that as soon as tomorrow, you can begin to put something together. So this is not, it doesn't require much analysis. Yes, you can read more to gain more knowledge, but it's something you can put to use tomorrow. And that's the truth. Coalition building. So I'm going to speak to this. Oftentimes, when you do your SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and things like that, and then you are looking at the external environment and the internal environment, analyzing everything, you may suddenly realize that, well, number one, the entire organization that you represent, you don't have enough people. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it may not be that you don't have enough people. It may just be that you don't have, very few of you have the knowledge of the subject matter or the knowledge of the issue. Okay, and so you may need to identify other organizations or other coalitions, as the case may be. Okay, so let me explain. An organization is usually started maybe by a group of people or by an individual. It is defined, they have their vision, their mission, and all that. A coalition is a group of organizations or a group of individuals coming together who share common, maybe objective or common, there's something that brings them together. There is a common cause, okay, that brings them together. Now, these organizations on their own may have their individual vision and all that, and thematic areas and things that they do. But when they come together in a coalition, there is one issue or two that bring them together, okay, into a coalition. So I believe that should say. So, so in an advocacy campaign where you need more resources, human or financial, you may need to team up with another organization. You may need to belong to a coalition that is already championing the cause, that thing you are passionate about. So instead of starting your own campaign, and then duplicating efforts, you may need to join an existing coalition or an existing group, okay? And then you can contribute your own skills, contribute your knowledge to ensure that you push that agenda forward beyond where it was before joining the organization. So we have different types of coalition. We have formal coalition and informal coalition. Some coalitions, I remember in 2011, we formed a coalition of coalition. Our interest was on the review of the electoral process. So that was what brought all of us together. Some were into gender issues, some were into electoral and constitutional issues, some other people were into education, some were into female advocacy around female gender mutilation and all that. But they all feel that if we review the electoral process, it will benefit everyone. And I have a very good example here. I don't know how many of you are aware that the Constitution of Nigeria says that a woman that is married is deemed to be an adult. It's in our Constitution. A woman that is married is deemed to be an adult. That was smuggled into our Constitution when it was written. Let me tell you the implication. The implication of that is that if in the northern part of the country where you can marry a 13-year-old, the moment you marry that girl, the law sees that girl as an adult. So whatever injustice, I call it injustice, I call it rape. A girl that is not fully matured, but the Constitution says she's already an adult. And so they end up with, they end up having, I don't know what they call this, something fistula. And, they end up with all kinds of diseases. They can't manage themselves because it's a child that you have just slept with. But the Constitution is still, as of today, as I'm talking to you, that is still in our Constitution. So for someone that belongs to a coalition where we are pushing for electoral reform, the agenda they will be pushing within that coalition is to review that part of the Constitution so that their advocacy around female genital mutilations and then child marriage and things like that, they can gain some traction in that regard. I hope I'm making sense to you. So sometimes in our coming together, we can develop an MOU that binds all of us together. So we all sign MOU to say that we belong to this. So that is formalizing it. But some are informal. Our coming together, we didn't sign anything. We just know that we have common we have a common cause. So the only thing that is going on is that at the apex, the leadership of this coalition and the other coalition, once there is a meeting to take a joint action on any issue, they just communicate to the leaders. The leaders communicate among themselves and they mobilize members around it. So it can be formal, it can be informal, it can be permanent or temporary. For instance, permanent, there was a coalition, an FOI coalition. That coalition lasted for more than 12 years, okay? It lasted for more than 12 years, okay? But immediately the FOI Act was passed into law. Guess what? The coalition they didn't dissolve the coalition. What they did was to come together and redefine what their focus would be now that the law has been passed. Because you have passed the law, how will it be implemented? How will people get to know the provisions of the FOI Act? So the coalition just transformed and started pushing the new agenda of sensitization and other activities around the publicizing the content of the FOI Act, okay, of the FOI Act. It can be collectively funded or individual members may seek their own funding. I remember I was part of the coalition I told you about, the coalition of coalitions I told you about earlier. We were supported by UNDP, but it wasn't only UNDP, it was UNDP, it was UK Aid, it was quite a number of them, okay? They came together and they gave us resources because we needed, okay, let me not mention it. They gave up to $1 billion, close to $1 billion naira at the time for this particular advocacy. So advocacy can be expensive sometimes. And trust me, the secretariat of that coalition, all of them started driving jeeps. Don't ask me how, but that was what happened. That was what happened. They started driving big cars, okay, and all that. So UNDP under what they call joint donor basket. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that it looks as if the donor also had the meeting and they came together. Let's put our resources together so that we can give this coalition of coalitions resources to be able to prosecute this particular advocacy campaign. And that was what happened in 2011, going to 2010, going to 2011 elections. Okay, in my own experience. Coalition may be loose networks or like-minded people with common understanding and so on and so forth. The coalition may be made up of individuals or organizations. I've spoken to that. Let me move quickly. So what are some of the, oh my God, I'm so sorry, the challenges of coalitions, okay? Despite many advantages working in coalitions, now, you know, you are dealing with different kinds of people. You are dealing with either individuals that own their own NGOs, or you are dealing with organizations, okay, who are now part of this coalition pushing this agenda. But whichever way you want to see it, at the base of it are human beings, okay, with certain proclivities and all that. So what I'm trying to say is that some people are difficult to manage, some are difficult to work in a team and all that. And then here you are working in a coalition. So it requires more complicated organization and logistics. You must have a lot of tools that you use. Tools for problem solving, tools for managing conflict management styles, conflict management channels. As in, you need to deploy a whole lot of things beyond the advocacy that you are even pushing for you to be successful, because you have brought birds of, well, you may say they are not quite, you can't call them birds of the same feather, but maybe the white part of the feather is more than the colored part, if you understand what I'm saying. Because what is really going on is that these are individual organizations who have now come together under a coalition. And so managing them becomes a very, very complicated thing to do. But at least we achieved it, and it can be achieved. Difficulty in achieving consensus among a large number, that's very true. I mean, it's so difficult to come to an agreement on how something will be done. Sometimes there are 10 ways or 20 ways or 20 strategies that can be deployed. How do you agree on one or two strategies? How do you do that? Okay, it takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of effort. It is achievable, but just know that it's a major challenge when it comes to working in a coalition or building a coalition for a common, to push a common cause, a common agenda and all that. Difficulty in managing peers and directing activities among autonomous organizations. I mean, we should kind of overflog that. Constant possibility of suspicion and rivalry between or among members. I just gave you one right now. I don't know if the secretariat of our coalition in 2010, 2011 was Alliance for Credible Elections. We just found out that all the staff, they increased their salaries and all that. I don't know if there were some perks that they didn't disclose, you know, and all that. But you can see how that when you are in a coalition, not everything is not revealed to you. So there's a lot of suspicion. So people started saying all sort of things, and apparently I happen to be among them, because I wondered why some of us were just doing the work and others were riding. Okay, that's fine. Let's talk about lobbying. So that's it about advocacy. There are still some things to talk about, but for now, I think that's enough when it comes to you understanding what advocacy is, and even to the point that you can make use of some of the things we have talked about to launch a campaign tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. It can be done. What is lobbying? Let's quickly look at lobbying. Lobbying is a practice of trying to influence government policies and decisions through engagement with legislators and government officials or policymakers, to put all of them together into one. So it's a type of advocacy. But this one, I don't know if we have lobbyists in Nigeria, but in America, you have groups that what they do is to lobby. You have individuals that are employed by organizations, okay, to lobby. Let me give you an example. The big pharmaceutical companies, some of them operating in some jurisdiction, they have lobbyists. What they do is to ensure that they persuade a senator or a congressman, you know, not to allow a particular position to be taken, because that position will have adverse effect on their product and on the bottom line. So what do? They pay lobbyists handsomely to lobby politicians, to lobby policymakers, to ensure that either the status quo remain or there is a change of policy that will eventually favor the new drug they have developed or the products that they are trying to push into the market, and all that, as the case may be. So lobbying, we don't see much of that in Nigeria, but I think we still have it, okay? We still have it. So we try to lobby legislators and government officials, either as a group or as individuals. You target them. Lobbying of lawmakers is a major advocacy tool which CSOs often adopt to influence public policy or make an input into the legislative process. I will tell you one that I participated in. There was something that we needed President Jonathan to do at the time, and it was difficult. That was in 2012, if I recall correctly. It was difficult to engage with him to get a meeting and all that. But somebody said they knew the then Minister for Women Affairs, who happens to be Mrs. Josephine Anene. And then because she's been a civil society person, if you know her background, she's been a civil society person. So we reached out to the minister, and the minister, instead of making a meeting happen between us and Jonathan, said that we should discuss the matter with Mrs. Patience Jonathan. She didn't have a political office. She just happens to be the wife of the president. But guess what? We went to Aguda House. We sat with her, spent about 2 hours, and we got what we wanted, because by the next day, the president's pronouncement and all that, I mean, already tilted towards us. Because one of the things you do as an advocate is that you do something that is called media tracking. Media tracking, because you want to see what is being talked about. Is your issue paramount? Is you want to analyze the context, the political context you are operating in. You need to track the media to know these things. And all that. Yeah, so we lobby. Effective lobbying is achieved through the presentation of persuasive argument to policy makers. Persuasive argument. So you must get your facts right. You must get the data right. You must show that you are knowledgeable. You must be able to demonstrate the impact of what you are talking about if accepted and all that. You must demonstrate knowledge. You must know. I mean, you must demonstrate that you know what you are talking about, and you must own the top. That is how you get National Assembly or the executive or the judiciary to back what you are, the issue that you are pushing. Characteristics of effective lobbying. Familiarity with the legislative process is very, very important. It's very, very important. If you are not, for instance, if it's going to be a legislative advocacy, you must know the processes, the first reading, the second reading, the third reading. What happens in the first reading? What happens in the second reading? What happens in the third reading? What relevant committees does what? Who is involved in what? How is it read? How do you bring it? How is it sponsored? Is it a private bill? Is it, you need to have the knowledge of the legislative process for you to be successful. Secondly, credible information. Your information must check out. Your data must be accurate. If they check, it must be so. Okay? So so even though you are lobbying, you are not lobbying nonsense. I'm sorry to use that word. You are lobbying something that is perhaps research-based, something that is verifiable, something that is real. I mean, something that people can check and find to be true or to be so. So credible information, relationships with policymakers, both formal and informal, very, very critical. And I will use another example of Octoville here. Earlier in the year, we signed Nelson, I need your permission. No, me, I have big mouth. I don't know. I need to know if I can share some information. I wanted to share about Smedan. Is Nelson still on the call?
No, sir. I think
No.
you may have logged out, sir.
Okay,
So I don't think. I think it's left.
Oh, okay, good. That's fine. That's fine. So now, so relationship with policymakers. So sometimes you don't just visit their offices and all that. I remember a number of what do you call it? We've gone for dinner with some and all that. And while eating, we are discussing the issue. You just want to have that informal rapport, informal relationship with policymakers. Where it is possible, I think it should be explored. Okay. The reason is this: imagine someone that you will call, and there's a lot of protocol around getting to that person. But during the informal engagement, the person can share, this is my WhatsApp number. Just let me know if there is any issue. And then you are in the ministry, you have scaled through the first security post. The last security post is telling you that no, it doesn't want to see anybody at this time. But you have developed an informal relationship with the person. A phone call or a WhatsApp message or an SMS can just do the magic. You send it and then you are seated with him in his office, because he will just go through the protocol set up to protect him and bring you in. Familiarity with internal political dynamics, very, very important. For instance, if you are doing a stakeholder mapping, let's say the issue for public-private dialogue, that issue has to do with, let's say, roads. Who handles roads in Nigeria? Ministry of Works, right? So there is this particular portion of road that has been causing accidents and all that. And you just took it upon yourself, your organization, to develop advocacy campaign around it and push if they will prioritize that road when they are distributing in the next budget, okay? That's the way it works. So so you are pushing for it. Now, in pushing for it, you need to engage with Minister of Works. But Minister of Works, you are not sure if Minister of Works will be willing to engage with you or to consult with you, I mean, and all that. So what do? You found out somehow that the Minister for Petroleum has been a friend of the Minister of Works since when they were in primary school. And they have maintained that relationship. Now, you notice that this may not be in the books. This may not be in any book, but it's just a finding, something you are digging. And then you found out that this person is related to this by blood, or this person has been a friend of this. So Ministry of Petroleum has nothing to do with the advocacy you are doing on the roads. But the reason why it's part of the stakeholder that you are engaging is because he's a friend. He shares something, affinity. He shares something with the Minister for Works. Okay? I hope that is a very good example to give. So you must be familiar with the internal political dynamics, or you may realize that, oh, these people always vote along the same lines. These people have common friends and all that. The lists are endless, okay? When it comes to engaging, and when it comes to lobbying policymakers for advocacy, in your advocacy campaign. Who is a stakeholder? Two things that I want you to pay attention to are the two words underlined. Anyone that has an interest in a project or initiative or an issue and can influence its success. Anyone that has interest or influence or both, that person is a stakeholder. Okay? So in drawing your stakeholder list or map, you factor in interest and influence. Stakeholders may not have the same objectives. It is important, therefore, to identify areas of convergence and areas of difference between them and manage individuals whose expectations are unlikely to be met. So when you bring stakeholders together to influence a particular policy, okay, you must do a proper analysis to know what the interest of each stakeholder is. Okay, the reason is because why are they following you? Why are they interested and all that? Is there something in it for them? You must identify that. You must say, oh, what is in it for stakeholder A? What is in it for stakeholder B? What is in it for stakeholder C? If there is a stakeholder D that you are not sure that what they are looking for being part of that coalition or being part of that advocacy campaign will be realized, don't wait until you achieve results. Start managing that person's expectation or that organization's expectations immediately so that it does not become a clog or you don't turn a supporter to an opponent. Very, very important. The first step in considering how to interact with stakeholders can be the preparation of a stakeholder map and stakeholder matrix. There are different ways you can design this, but I found this, I could have designed one by myself, but I found this and I think it will help us to, it will help me to explain all I've been saying. When it comes to stakeholder map, this is called stakeholder matrix. And you have, I don't know, we have X and Y axis. Which one is which one? Okay, we have stakeholder interest. So you see the interest to my left hand side, vertically, you see that interest increases as you move up. And then you see the stakeholder influence moving on the horizontal plane, and it increases from left to right, while the stakeholder interest increases from bottom to top. Okay, so when you have done what I call stakeholder lists, when you list all the people that are going to be involved in a particular advocacy campaign, okay, you need to, after listing them, you need to place them in this quadrant. You need to place them here. So the left but left bottom as low interest and low influence. When you do your stakeholder list, who and who will be here, what you will now do is that you position them in this matrix. So someone that has low interest, that has low influence, what they just need is just basic information. And then you don't need to spend resources when it comes to contacting them and so many. I mean, when in your meetings and all that, if your resources can take care of 60 people and you have a list of 100, you can use this matrix to actually remove those who even though they are stakeholders, but they have low interest and low influence. So you may not really bring them to the room, okay? To my right, as we move up, still down, you have low interest and high influence. Someone that doesn't have much interest in the issue, but they have influence, high influence. You monitor them regularly. You know how they say it in pidgin. You don't want anybody to put sansan for your gari or something. I think that's the way it is said. You know, so you monitor them because this person doesn't have interest. If things happen that, if it so happen that something that it will make some gains from going against your campaign, you know that they can easily sell you out. So you monitor them regularly, and then you anticipate their needs. Based on the example I just gave you, you anticipate their needs and you plan for it. Okay, now I'm moving to the left top. Is it top left? We call it high interest, but low influence. They have interest, but their influence is low. What do you do? How do you handle this stakeholder? You inform them completely. There is no message you are putting out that you are not sharing with them because they have interest, okay? There might be feedbacks that will help to tweak the messaging. There might be feedback that will help to expand the stakeholder net, as the case, you know, and all that, because they have interest. So they have that interest to drive them to also have more knowledge or to read more or to gain more knowledge, and that knowledge becomes beneficial to your campaign or to your campaign, to your coalition or to your organization. And then you also monitor them closely. Monitor them closely because their influence is low. You don't want someone with this high interest you don't want them to be bought. In my community, people send political agents to polling stations. And when they finish voting, what they do in my community is that the remaining ballot papers is shared among the parties that are there. I mean, it's a terrible thing I'm sharing with you. But guess what begins to happen? If one party has more money, you can buy the other agent so that you thumbprint the remaining ballots for your party. Otherwise, you will share the ballot papers equally. It's terrible. So you monitor this person with high interest but low influence, monitor them closely. High interest and high influence. You regularly engage them regularly. This is where much of your resources are expended, okay? Are expended. This is where you spend more, okay? You keep them satisfied because they can make your campaign successful and they can destroy your advocacy campaign. Now, what I want us to do, I'm going to skip this to get to this last one. I want to ask us, and I need your feedback. Can we map stakeholders for a PPD on state policing in Nigeria? I have my pen here. I have my pen and my jotter here, and I will just be writing as you are giving me names of groups and individuals. We want to discuss, want to have a public-private dialogue just to know what the people think, just to know the pulse, to test the pulse of different stakeholders when it comes to state policing in Nigeria. Who and who do you think should be part of this dialogue? My loan.
Governors of the state, sir.
Governors, state governors.
No, sir.
State governors. State
Sorry,
governors.
you know what you do? Just give me your name and what you're saying. State governors.
State governors, sir.
Is that Mr. Wonder?
No, Stephen, sir.
Stephen, okay. State governors, yes.
Lẹ́kọ̀ọ́lá Afẹ́nifẹ́re, a Yoruba agitational
Socio-political group.
Yes.
Socio-political groups. Yes. Here's the last thing we are doing. So you are the one to determine when we end.
Hello?
Yes.
Gladys on the line.
Gladys, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. I can hear you.
Yes. I think another critical stakeholder should be business or heads of corporations that do business. Yes, private owners of businesses, multinational or multilateral.
Captains of industry.
Yes.
Is it just my end or it's breaking?
No, it's not just your end. Well, I heard that. Of industries. Okay. Or you also say multinationals. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want us to have about 10. Because what we're going to do next is to go back to the stakeholder map and try to suggest where to put the governors, where to put what, and all that. So, yeah. So we are on number 1, 2, 3, 4. We are on number 4. We're going to 10.
Traditional rulers, sir.
Traditional rulers. Thank you. Traditional rulers. Yes. Six. Think about it. State policing, no, you have not even mentioned some of the key actors. What about the IGP?
The
The
Okay.
Inspector General of Police,
Yes.
plus commissioners of police, right? In case.
This is Wonder. I would say community head, heads of communities, and then
Yeah, you have already said it, traditional rulers.
okay. I was going to add the local security, like the JTF that communities have.
Local security outfits.
Yes, sir.
Local security should we call them agencies? Okay. Do you have an example? Like Amotekun?
Exactly, sir. Exactly.
Okay. Amotekun. Which one? Ebubeagu, is it a creation of a state? Can somebody confirm that?
So I should think it's more southeast than belonging to a state.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Number 8. What do you think about the Association of Private Security? Do you think they have something to contribute?
Sorry,
Hello?
sir. I didn't
Yes, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
the last thing you said. So much confirm.
Oh, okay. I said, what about the Association of Private Securities? All those, the people manning our estates and all that. Okay, what do you think of vigilante groups?
So I think they fall under local security.
Okay, they fall under okay, you see now, this is part of the problem you face when you are doing this list. I don't want to lump them under local security agencies. Because under local security agencies, we are thinking about Amotekun and the rest of them. And there's still a distinct group of people, the vigilante groups. They use their guns, and then they are not as sophisticated as these local security agencies. So because you want to invite them, if you lump them together, you may think this group is representing the other, and it's not necessarily so. You understand? So that's why I'm separating them. So 9. I want us to have 10. Are we thinking about it, or am I alone?
Can we have state politicians, sir?
Say, oh, okay. Somebody said the judiciary. This is judiciary.
But now,
State politicians. Can you clarify? Just clarify.
like Senate members, House of Rep members.
Oh, okay.
I can push for.
Oh, legislature.
Yes, sir. I can push forward the bill.
Very correct. I agree with you. So we have 10. We have 10. So I'm going to go back to this matrix. Let's try and do this. So where will you put the state governors? The state governors. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir. We can see it, sir.
Thank you. So the first stakeholder we have here is state governors. Where do you put them?
That's top right.
Top right, high interest, high influence. Okay, I think I agree with you. So we put governors there. Yes. The next one, socio-political groups. That's Afenifere, Ohaneze Ndigbo or something. And then we have this Arewa group in the north. Where do you put them? Are we tired? Do you want me to bring the class to? I just feel that we should use this to have an idea of what I've been talking about, to bring it alive to us, than just talking and talking. So I just feel we should do this before we go. Where do you put the socio-political groups? Okay, let me ask the question this way. Do you think they have high interest in the matter?
Yes.
Why? Who said yes? Just tell us why you said yes. Okay. I think they have high interest, but I don't think they have as much influence as the governors. Okay, so I will put them in the top left corner. High interest, low influence. What do you think? Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir, we agree with you.
Hello, everyone. What is going on? I've been talking to myself, and right now,
Just considering.
you are thinking about it. Odun is saying, "Oh, sorry, you have been sending me message." Press, media. Okay, awesome. So we have more stakeholders. 11, media. Okay. Yes, sir. High interest and low social. Okay, high interest. Somebody agreed with me. So social political group, high interest, low, high interest, low influence. What about captains of industries? Business owners and all. Where will you
High
put them?
interest and low influence.
Business
High
owners.
interest and low. High interest
High
and low.
interest.
You think so? Captains of industry? I don't
High
think
interest,
so.
low influence, because
Well, okay, I want you to consider
their
this.
business,
Consider
especially
the lower.
during the current security situation.
What do you think about low interest, high influence? That's what you
Low
said.
influence, yes.
High interest. No, low interest, high influence. Do you agree?
Okay. It's high.
I don't think so. Except you can give completely.
No, it's high.
Yeah,
I retract.
think
It's
it's-
high.
It's high.
I think it's high interest, low influence. Because considering the security challenges and the security situation in the country now, business owners want one-on-one security outfits. In fact, some of them employ private security organizations to do this.
Okay, so it is what is low. What did you call it? High interest.
So I think
low
it's
influence.
high interest, but low influence. Yes, they have interest in it, but
okay.
Excuse me, I don't think that
Hey, sorry. What, Gladys? I didn't hear what you said last.
No, it's Odwaya, sir. I said I think they are low interest, low influence.
Low interest, low influence. Captains of industry.
Yes. Because
okay.
they can afford
to have. I can hear you. I have a very shaky network though.
Although I'm listening, why did you say low interest, low influence?
Okay, because I feel they could afford to have their private. They could afford to have their own private.
I'm really happy that you are saying that. But are you not talking about the big ones? When you are talking about captains of industry, it does not necessarily have to be a multi-million naira or dollar business, don't you think?
Yes, sir. Okay, for example, now, someone told me that let's say, for example, the overall, let's say, like the overall executive of, let's say, bank, for example, they have personal bodyguards to themselves. They have personal. Okay, these people need police. We know that yes, they need security, but they can afford. So it's not like they don't have interest, but like under it, they just need essential information, but minimal conduct. I think they could just
Okay. So
they can actually run their own policing or security outfit.
okay, but you don't think that they can analyze the situation that should state policing
So
be
that's
allowed, the resources spent on private security may actually drop. And then that way, you understand what they are spending currently to provide security for themselves and their organization may actually drop. That's number one. Number two, don't you think that we are looking at the big guys? The reason why I love what we are doing right now is that sometimes you realize that the group is pulled in many directions, because I personally believe that they have low interest, but they have high influence, because through their associations and organizations, they can engage with governors or with anybody, you know, because they are the ones driving the economy of each state of the country. Now, but your own point is valid. You understand? Your point also is valid. So what do we do in a coalition or in an organization where all of us don't agree on where to put a particular stakeholder? Can you guess what we do? We vote. We vote. And if the larger percentage of us, you know, agree that it should be in a particular quadrant, then we put it there. And then we let it rest. As we move on, some things can become clearer. And that clarity can lead us into revisiting our decision to now move that group to another place. You get what I'm saying? I just want you to have a feel of how this thing works. It's not just somebody sitting in the corner of nowhere analyzing, doing stakeholder map. Stakeholder mapping is done in a group. Okay, and all that. So that's okay. So let's move on. Okay, let's move to traditional rulers. Where do you put traditional rulers? Do you think they have high interest or low interest?
They have low interest but high influence.
Traditional rulers?
Yeah,
why
did you say that? Yeah, I'm considering the fact that traditional rulers, be it kings, as you rightly said the other time, that they can, there's no palace that you get to, there's no kingdom that you get to that you don't see security outfits there. So they themselves, they can afford to put up security structures.
That's traditional rulers, right?
Yes, other than depending on the state government, because I'm sure traditional rulers came up with the issue of vigilantes and local hunters that go around the villages to secure the people. So,
who am I discussing with?
Steven, sir.
So, Steven, let me ask you a question. Is it true that traditional rulers are bothered that some of their what do you call it? Some of their, what do you call those who dwell in that kingdom? Some of their subjects need jobs. And if you do state policing, the number of slots that we get to their community, we ensure that some get employed. That's one angle. Another angle is that some of these vigilantes, maybe some of them finish school SAT and all that, and the community is paying them to do vigilante work and all. Don't you think that they may think that they could get formalized, as in they can become a state, some of them can join the state police the moment it becomes, is passed into law. Do you get what I'm saying? If you look at it from different angles, don't you think that they have high interest?
Yeah, from what you said now, I think I've begun to reconsider my options. So okay. I think they have high interest, then high influence.
No, they have high interest, but they have low influence. Now, when you talk about influence, it's either you are talking about someone
Yeah, I said
yes,
high
sorry.
interest, high influence.
High interest, high influence. What did you say? Hello? Okay. For somebody to have high interest, high influence, it means the person is interested in the issue and the person is in a position to either formulate policy or influence policy. Do you get what I'm saying? So I don't think we have a lot of stakeholders in this top right corner. I don't think so. You understand? I think most of the people we're going to have in that box are going to be policy makers. What do you think?
Can we consider the fact that there are some traditional rulers that are first class, like the Oni of Ife, the Olu of Wari? There was a time the Olu of Wari came to the villa to discuss some security challenges with Buhari. So for him to have gotten that kind of influence to enter the villa and discuss things like that with presidents, and I'm sure some of the state politicians, before you win any election, everybody knows that you have to go and see the traditional ruler and seek for his support and all sorts of things. So there is a particular kind of influence that they command to in their own small setting. So we can say they have high interest, high influence.
Okay. Okay. For the sake of your argument, I will leave it. I will leave it to that.
So I think that I don't know. I may be wrong, but
please go ahead.
My understanding of the interest and influence, or rather the influence, is in making that policy become effective, like in effecting it, right? Not necessarily in terms of whether it affects you. It's who gets it, who has the influence enough to make that policy happen. I want to believe that's what you mean, sir.
Yeah, you mean high interest and high influence, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. But the person has what it takes to make that policy happen by time.
Thank you so much for that clarity. Because in my own opinion, if you are a first class traditional ruler, you may have unfettered access to the presidency or to any office. When you discuss with them, so we can say you have influence, right? Because you can walk up to the president and discuss matters with the president. But do you know that when you come back to your state, the Olu of Wari will get back to Delta State? If you are at loggerheads with the governor of Delta State, that your conversation with the president is null and void, because state police will be initiated by the governors. The only problem is that it is not in a concurrent list at the moment. Am I not correct? Am I correct?
Very correct, sir.
Yes. So the moment the law makes policing, sorry, go ahead.
I'm with this your new argument, sir.
Oh my, we can't hear you. Can you type it?
I interest.
Okay, more people are saying traditional rulers, high interest and high influence. Okay. No problem. Okay. So, where do you put vigilante groups? We'll just do one more and then that'll be it. Vigilante groups, where do we put them? Hello.
High interest, low influence.
Vigilante group, high interest, low influence. That's correct. Because they can't move anything. They maybe they are
You can
influenced.
give them high
within their
interest, low
community.
influence.
Eh?
Because they also have interest in earning more. Hello, sir.
I can hear you.
Low influence.
Yes, high interest, low influence. I agree. So the last one we're going to look at the legislative arm, both at the national and the states. So National Assembly and states houses of assembly.
High interest, low influence.
Eh?
I'll say high interest, high influence.
Okay. Think about it. This is the last one I want us to. Okay, no, I want us to do the legislature and then the judiciary. Legislature, where do you put them? Do they have high interest? Or low interest?
They will have high interest, high influence.
Okay. Okay. That's Nelson, right?
Yes.
No, that's Namde.
Okay, so what I'm saying in essence is that I can actually argue that because sometimes at that level, the other things, you have found situations where the National Assembly is following the presidency, okay? And the position they are taking is not the same with their constituents, okay? And all that, but for the sake of this exercise, I don't know I don't know if other people. So I think they should have high interest, and definitely they have high influence. Just to state that it depends on how responsible in particular, but we're looking at it generally. So yeah. So the last one I want us to do is the judiciary. In this quadrant, where do you put the judiciary?
High, sir.
High, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Judiciary, high. Okay. The last one we did, where do you, legislature, you put it at high, Abi? Legislature, high. Now, we're just going to leave. But let me ask you this question. If the governors, traditional rulers, judiciary, and legislature, if they have high interest and they have high influence, how come we are yet to have state police? Is that not, that's a big question, right? Because if they have high interest and high interest, by now, it should not only be, the issue shouldn't be on the front burner. We should have state police right now. Don't you agree? If you have insight into why we don't have it yet, I mean, please, you can share. But I just wanted to know that
no political will.
No political will.
Yes.
On the part of who?
Individuality and self-interest. On the part of government. The individuals in government.
Are we now saying? This government you are mentioning, governors are there, traditional rulers are there, judiciary, legislature, high influence, high interest, high influence. How come we still don't have state police? You said lack of political will. Are these not the people that we are referring to when we say that? Okay, maybe one thing I missed out. Where will you put?
I think it's mere.
Let me add federal government. 12 federal government. Where will
Most
you
times
put
it's
the
just
federal
paperwork.
government?
We do paperwork and we don't follow up. There's no proper follow-up mechanism.
As we
Once the
wrap up,
interest is watered down along the way, everybody just their own zone again and
oh, Gladys, we can't
start
hear.
all over again.
Okay. Where
I
should
think
we?
federal government will be high interest, low.
Eh?
Okay.
Federal government.
High interest, low influence.
High
For me, I
interest.
I think it's the opposite.
Ah,
High
federal
Yeah, I
government.
think
low
there is a
low
disparity
interest
between
for high
the interest in
What
federal government
he's
and
asking that if
that
they have
of
high interest and high
Please
influence
let
in
me
government
moderate this.
and all that.
Sorry, Buzo, you were saying.
Why is it that we know?
Chibuzo, you were saying something.
Okay, so I think there is a disparity between the interest of
Federal
the
government.
federal government and that of the state government. For the state
Correct.
government, it's likely
Hello? Uh-oh.
We can't hear you, Chibuzo.
okay. Sorry, I received a call now.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah,
Where
we
will
can
you put the? Where will you
There's a
put
disparity between the interest
and the influence?
of the federal government and that of the state government. For the state government, there is likely a high interest, while that of the federal government, there is a lower interest in that matter. So
But they have high influence.
yes, for the federal government, they have the influence to
Correct.
to create a change, such as I mean, also for that of state government, they have that influence to create a change, but then the interest now is kind of different for state and federal government. For that of federal government, they are I don't think they have much interest in causing a change in that aspect.
I agree with you. So the governors, we will say high interest, high influence. For the federal government, we will say low interest, but high influence.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. The last person that I think is also very important for this exercise is the IGP, Inspector General of Police.
Low interest but high influence.
Correct. I believe so too. They don't want, because they feel that the money they are getting, everything will be affected and all that. They don't want it. The IGP and the rest of the police, they don't want states to have their own outfit. So yeah. So this is just an idea of, so imagine you have drawn a long list. You can have 100 or more. So there must be a system to actually putting them in these boxes. The reason why you need to do this over and over again is because by the time you are making decisions, you want to know and distributing your decisions around the distribution of resources and things like that. You want to always eat where the iron is hot. I think that's the way they say it. So what you do essentially is to concentrate your effort into where you know you will get either more results or you will get results or you'll be more effective. So that is why this should be done properly. But let me also tell you that I don't think most organizations actually do this. I think people just do guesswork, people do rough work. It's devoid of critical thinking most times. We just feel, oh, these are the people that should be in the meeting. These are the people that we should invite and all that. And then as the conversation ensues, they just realize that a critical stakeholder is missing because they've not been properly factored into that. Okay. The last part I'm not discussing this. I will share my slides with you. You can pick this up because we have talked about it in a way. So we're supposed to wrap up by discussing some of the challenges of development communication. Well, I have a confession to make. I did it, but I can just share with you some of my thoughts around it. I want you to know that the conventional way of implementing initiatives or projects, as the case may be, is faster than the deployment of the principles of development communication. For instance, the conventional way of implementing projects was largely prescriptive. You just say, this is what these people want, this is what they need. It's not as if you are not analyzing, but your analysis is not from engagement. It's from just the figures you are seeing on the paper, on the screen, as the case may be. There are human beings that you need to engage and know. There are things that cannot be communicated just by numbers. For instance, how do you capture body language? You know, how do you capture body language? How do you capture other things that are not said? That by just sitting with the stakeholders, or by just visiting a community, or by just visiting a commissioner or a minister, you saw some other things that if you were to be in your office without that visit, those things will have eluded you. Okay, so I think time is one of the major challenge here, because you just want to, for the one that is prescribing, you can finish everything on your table, on your desk, do your desk research, put everything together, give the money to the contractor, they deploy to site. Before you know it, everything is done, right? In less than 3 months or 4 months, your primary healthcare center is built. Your school project is completed because all the money required, everything you require is there. But when it comes to development communication, you will need to engage the people. You will need to validate or to do what is called to feel, they call it the most felt need of community or of the group. So you must engage. Without platforms to dialogue with the people, you may be making a huge mistake. Like someone told us in Gombe, that the government felt that what a particular community needed was borehole, and they dug a borehole. And having dug that borehole, they realized that nobody was going there to fetch water. They were still trekking 1 or 2 kilometers to fetch water from the stream. And when the investigation was carried out, they realized that they just observed that children were going, women were going to the stream, trekking over 1 kilometer to fetch water, and without finding out why and some other underlying issues, dialoguing with the community and all that, they just decided that, oh, let's dig boreholes around the community and all that. Unknown to them, the period of going to the stream was when the women had to gossip. In another community, I'm sorry, I hope all of us are adults. In another community, this one is very real, in Ondo State. The reason why they didn't patronize the government borehole was because when they send the kids in the evening to the stream, that is when husband and wife are to themselves, to each other. And so if you don't, so deploying development communication is actually a two-way communication, number one. Then number two, you are dialoguing with real people, real issues, and then they are communicating to you real solutions to their issues, okay? So time is a major factor in my own view. And then resources can also be a factor, because if you are going by the conventional way of implementing projects, you just deploy. You are not spending money with several dialogues. You are not bothering your head with some setbacks that you may have that will delay the project by a month or two or several months. I was in a particular community in Ondo State. It was a borehole water and sanitation project, we call it, supported by EU. This was in 2006. And then we got there, the community gave us a land. And we had mobilized the engineer, shown him the spot and all that. Everything was going well. We just got there on a Saturday to start the project, only for a man to say, no, he wouldn't allow us to dig that borehole. So we persuaded him that it would benefit the entire community. You know what? We had to postpone it. And then it was about 2 weeks or thereabout later that we met at the Palace of the King to have conversation. And the meeting was not even about our water and sanitation borehole anymore. It became a conflict resolution meeting because the land belonged to this guy who was based in Lagos and he wasn't consulted. And the entire community agreed that that is where they should dig the borehole. You see what I'm saying? So at that point, a development practitioner removes the cap of project management and wears the cap of a conflict manager. Okay, because without resolving that conflict, you can't continue. Now, why is it a setback? The reason why you're having that setback is because you are deploying the principles of development communication. If you were going by the conventional way, you just choose a land as government or whoever is giving you the contract, and you dig the borehole and you go your own way. Whatever happens afterwards doesn't concern you, but not so with development communication. You are thinking about impact. You are thinking about sustainability. You are thinking about scale. You want the community to have ownership of that project. You want the project to be sustainable so that after you have left the community with your resources, you want the projects that you supported them with to still last several years. Okay, that is what we mean by sustainability. That after the withdrawal or the expiration of the project, of the donor or the funding, the project can still stand, can still last. Okay, so that is one thing. So resources is one challenge based on the explanation I gave. And not the last one I have before we started this meeting, that was where I stopped. I will have come up with more. There are unintended negative impacts on the community sometimes. So when you engage the community and you enlighten them, you open their eyes and all that, you may not have control sometimes, not in all cases, over how the community will react or respond based on the awareness you have brought, based on what you have, based on the approach to development that you have brought. You have done something good, okay? They will forever respect you in that community, but they may take into their hands certain actions that are not, that you wouldn't approve of, as a practitioner. And don't forget I quoted Cohen when we started. When it comes to advocacy, you are doing activities within the ambit of democracy, within the ambit of the law, okay? You are not breaking the law. You are doing things that are allowed. They may be extreme things, but they are still within the perimeters of the law of the land, okay? So these are some of the things that may result. And the good example of that is Niger Delta. I wish that some of us will read the story of the emergence of some of these, the Avengers and Tompolo and the rest of them, Asari Dokubo and all that. These were people who were enlightened many, many years ago. And, I don't think we have control over the picking up of arms to defend their land and all that. That, I don't think, was the intention of the advocates that started the whole campaign in the first place. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you so much for your time. I'm really sorry I couldn't join on time, so I don't think we'll have been finishing this late if I had been able to join you around 4. I was ready, I was set, but there were issues around joining you. Thank you. If there are questions, I can take them. If not...
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Steven, sir, I have a question, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to ask, sir, is it a question or an advice? What kind of advocacy can one employ? They are working in an organization and the owner of the organization, the most time resorts to physical combat against his employees to settle out issues that can be settled professionally.
Okay.
So, and the staffs, they've met, they've consulted together, but there was no breakthrough. So I want to ask that, because majority of people are like, if you talk now, lose out your job.
Yeah.
So people that were not satisfied, so that they leave the company or just keep quiet. So I want to ask them, in this kind of situation, what kind of advocacy can staffs employ to see that this issue of unmannered behavior by the owner of the company stops?
Thank you so much, Steven. I'm really happy that you want to use the instruments of advocacy or any advocacy tool to resolve this organizational issue. But the first thing I will say is that man needs to be managed. The question I will ask you is, because you are under that employment, and I could imagine what is going on. People don't want to lose their jobs, if I'm correct. They don't want to lose their jobs. They want to continue to work there, but the environment is very toxic. The man does not caution or employ other civil way of managing staff, but perhaps uses someone that can resort to physical violence, will also perhaps be verbally abusive. I can almost tell. Now, this is what I would say. The man needs to be managed. What does that mean? What are his triggers? Does he do it just for nothing? Is it a transferred aggression? He's coming from somewhere, and then you know that he's going to vomit his venom on this first set of people he meets? Is it that situation? Or is it that staff are not delivering, and then he could have used other means of chastising the staff, or, expressing his displeasure, but it results to physical fight? You understand? So I don't have the details of this. And don't forget that advocacy is specific. The issue is clear, right? Now you are trying to tell me that the issue here is physical violence. That's the truth, right? But the real truth is that what is causing it? If I don't have the other information, prescribing to you what to use, it's it won't be correct. So I can only talk generally. And what I would say generally is that, number one, have you heard the term managing your boss? There is such a term. It is a form of, I don't know, I think it's a style. This one is not advocacy. This one is conflict management. You understand? So the tool or the knowledge that you need is what is called conflict management. That's number one. So it's not advocacy you need, it's conflict management that you need. And then you need to manage it. What are its triggers? What causes it? Are there people that once they can approach him, and if you can get across to those ones, he will listen, okay? These are things that we really need to look at before I can answer you directly. That's number one. Then number two, the appropriate thing to have done, I'm just looking at the extreme situation where this man has been physical with a number of staff and all that. People just resign and they leave the organization. I don't think that is the right attitude. I think if one of these staff members had the courage to sue him, right? Even if it's to sue him or to threaten to sue him, in which case you will serve him notice, but you don't have the intention of going through with it, but you wanted to shake him a little bit and all that. If one of the staff had done that, he might have had to rethink, his actions and attitude and all that. So I don't know what you think about my responses, but I don't have the facts of the matter. When it comes to advocacy or deploying a particular tool to get a particular result, you must have everything well analyzed. You must look at all the context. Yes, the context of that action needs to be properly analyzed. Then you can say, oh, this is what we should do. This, or you can say 1, 2, 3 things are what we should deploy. If this fails, we will do this. If this one does not fully succeed, then we'll do this third one. So it's not, I'm not prescribing a one cap fits all kind of solution here. I don't know if this helps or if you are making sense of what I just said.
Yeah, it does, sir. Thank you very much. Sir.
Thank you. Okay, we're about closing. Is Deborah still here? It's over from me.
Yeah. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you now.
Audible. Wow. I could hear you as well. Thank you very much, sir. So are there any more questions apart from Mr. Stevens' question? Are there any more questions? Take a quick feedback. We've learned. Okay. Okay, sorry, I wanted to get my earphones back. All right, so we're just going to take a quick feedback. We've learned a lot today. We've learned about stakeholder mapping. We've learned about advocacy. We've learned lobbying. So, just in one sentence, I want everybody to just, state one thing that stood out for them. We've talked about coalition building for advocacy. We've actually talked about a lot: advocacy planning, how to plan, your advocacy, your strategy, and all of that. So please, first, just one short sentence is what stood out for you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Pastor Temitope Shaba for taking us.
Good evening. Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, I want to thank Pastor Temitope Shaba for taking us down the journey of the tool of advocacy. For me, playing in the APC industry, we most times employ lobbying as a tool to get what we want. So from the way you explained and the kind of strategies to use, I was really I added to my knowledge again on how to use all these things to my own favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Chibuzo.
So I want to, in a special way, thank Pastor Tope for this enlightening lecture. The last time I took this lecture, I don't think I grabbed it as much as I did today. So thank you very much for bringing out your time to take us on this. And one thing that stood out for me is the fact that there are different types of advocacy, and in most cases, we don't kind of approach conflicts or situations from one angle. In some cases, it has to be a particular type of advocacy that should work, and in some cases, it could be a combination of, either of the two, or about four of them: the adversary, that's confrontational, and the other one being
negotiated advocacy.
Negotiated. So it just stood out for me that you don't just it has to be strategic, and not every type works for any situation at all. It has to be strategic. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chibuzo.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, my name is Odwai.
Although we can't hear you anymore.
Advocacy is something, it's an aspect that everyone, is something you can do. There's no big deal with advocacy. I was like, wow, I've never seen it in this light. And also the part that says there's always a timing. You must be able to know the timing in which you can push forth your advocacy. You must be able to test the pulse of the time. So that's just it for me, this class. Thank you.
Thank you, Odu. Nnamdi.
Does anybody else want to go? Does Mr. Nnamdi want to go?
I really want to hear Gladys though. You engage me more than every other person.
Mr. Temitope Shaba, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear now.
Thank you so much. I've really learned so much again with development communications. It's a field that is familiar, and so most of the things we were saying was resonating. One high point for me is that I keep telling people when I engage is the fact that the money really is in the Northeast. I don't know how long it will be, just like as it was it was in back in the Niger Delta. But yeah. I sincerely hope that the crisis will end so that people will have their lives back. Thank you so much. You brought another source to me for development communications, and I really appreciate the engagement. And using the NSAS as an example was a different angle. I never looked at it from the way you shared it, but I will have to start reading about it again. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gladys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I think a lot of things stood out for me, really. You talked about lobbying, you talked about advocacy planning, the fact that you actually have to plan it. You know, you're talking about getting access to assess the resources of our organization for us to know if we can actually conduct an advocacy campaign. You know, you said something about identifying internal challenges, you know, as well. And you said that advocacy planning should always be targeted at the people, the community, or the people that you are trying to, you know, help, so that they understand and you don't go, you know, about doing something that is not, they do not necessarily need. You also said how the message will be communicated is very important. Actually, let me not go on and on. So you said a lot of things, and I think the part of advocacy being negotiated and being, you know, confrontational is another one that stood out for me, that it can be both ways, you know, talking about the NSARS and then the ASU. I think in Nigeria, I'm sorry, but in Nigeria, I think maybe confrontational advocacy, although it doesn't use so much, really, because I mean, it stirs up a lot of, from experience right now, it has not yielded. Maybe in the long run it will. Negotiated well, it does, but it takes time. So maybe when Nigeria grows to a particular point, we can be using the confrontational one so that we'll be getting sharp.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you very much, Pastor Tobe. Thank you so much for taking out the time and session to, you know, deliver the session. And thank you, everyone, for.
Anyway. So a lot from this. Thank you, sir. I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking our time to come in here. We're taking a lot of classes for our facilitators that day. So we'll meet again next week. The time will be communicated to us. Let's have a great night rest.
Thank you, Debbie.